When it comes to discussing our bodies, we often get a little uncomfortable. Women's health issues are often seen as off limits, taboo topics we just don't talk about. It's time for that to change. Let's talk. Welcome to the Bravemumma podcast, where we are going to do exactly that. Discuss everything from periods to pregnancy, motherhood to menopause. No topic is off limits. Join Stephanie Thompson, the brave mama and author of The Day My Vagina Broke, as she asks other brave women about their personal health challenges and triumphs. You will learn, laugh and cry as Stephanie finds out everything you wanted to know but were too afraid or embarrassed to ask. So, grab a cuppa and enjoy.
Hello, brave mamas. Are you ready to get the lowdown about everything women's health? I'm your host, Steph Thompson, and I can't wait to share our special guest with you today. I know we said at the end of our last episode with Amy Marie that we would be speaking with someone who knows all about birthing stories, but seeing as today it is officially World Gynecological Oncology Awareness Day, we thought that this bonus episode was just too important not to share. We chat with Kath Mazzella this afternoon about common cancers that affect women but are not very well known to us women, but also to the people who are charged for caring for us. I've grabbed my cup of Madam Flavor's Australian afternoon grey, just needing that little pep up in the afternoon, and it's my favourite of all time, Ceylon tea. By the end of this episode, I hope you feel more confident to chat with your health professional about your pelvic health. And keep asking until all those niggling thoughts and questions are heard and answered. Oh, good morning, Kath. It's so lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a great honour to be here.
And for those who can't see, I'm loving your backdrop. Maybe you could just give us a visual. What's behind you right now?
Well, behind me is a quilt that's made by the WA quilters, because I was trying to get a visual thing out there. And I've actually taken this quilt to the front counter of BBC TV, and within a week I was on the Woman's Hour. So this quilt speaks a lot of words.
Oh my goodness, yes, the Woman's Hour. Wow, that's my big dream goal. Go you. Yeah. I'm going to talk about that some more, but first of all, let's find out who is Kath. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and more so who you were before you started your cancer journey?
Right, I was a single mother with 3 children, and then I met my husband, my now husband, and I was just a busy working mother with these 3 teenage children, and then all of a sudden I was struck down with a gynecological cancer, and so my life completely changed since then. And
obviously 3 teenage kids. I bet you that could only hit you like a ton of bricks, right? When did you kind of think that something wasn't quite right for you?
Well, I did have an abnormal pap smear, and I was told to pop off and have my cervix lasered. But this was back in 1988, which was a long time ago. But you see, we weren't informed why you're having pap smears. That there was notes on the back of the toilet door, make sure you have a pap smear every 2 years. But we weren't really informed. I don't think there was enough research in it at that stage. But we knew that some women were dying from cervical cancer, and that's basically all we knew, that we had to have a pap smear. It's just a story.
Yeah, there was no explanation as to why.
No.
So when you first had that abnormal pap smear come back, is that kind of how the process happened?
Yes. I had my cervix lasered, and then about 18 months later I went to 2 GPs and 2 gynecologists with a lump in the vulva. Okay. Now I want women to nobody gets anything out of my talk today, I want women to know that the vulva is the external genitalia and the vagina is the internal genitalia. I'm quite pedantic about that, but until we as women use the correct terminology, well, we're always going to be behind the 8 ball. So anyhow, I'm getting off track.
No, I love that. I love that you just said that, because it is so imperative that we are able to name and label our own body parts. Very different, right?
It's just totally amazing that even in this day and age, and we're such a sexual society, and everything's out in the open, but we can't expose that the vulva is actually a vulva and not a vagina. But then I thought, why is there all this stigma around? And I found the word pudendum. The Latin meaning of that word says female genitalia, one who should and ought to be ashamed, the shameful part of a woman. So we all call it a vagina, so we don't carry around this shame and call it a vulva.
Oh my gosh, what a light bulb moment. I have been talking to women all month about why we kind of have this shame and taboo, and you've just discovered it.
I know.
Wow. Because go.
Sorry, but I did hear somewhere once that a child abuse case was thrown out because the child was asked, where were you touched? And she said the vagina, but in actual fact it was the vulva. So because it was thrown out because we didn't use correct terminology. It's so crazy, I tell you.
It is. And I think just secretly, I know that well, women, when they discover this themselves, they're like, oh, is it really? Oh, yeah, I knew that. And they kind of just brush it off like, of course I knew that. But secretly, we probably didn't. And I actually didn't until I was a grown woman, probably a few years ago, discovered that they're very different. And I think, I don't know about you, you've probably seen it a lot on social media. Women love to have their input, but they say, oh, for goodness sake, just call it all one thing.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Who cares? It matters.
Okay. So can we imagine if men called their penises testicles? I mean, we would all laugh our heads off, wouldn't we? That would be funny. So why is it? I know I've just spoke at the Australian Nurses and Midwifery Conference as a keynote speaker, and I put up a diagram of a great vagina. There's a great vagina wall. And they're all vulvas. And so I put up a wall of penises and I called them the Great Wall of Testicles. Yeah. Because
and they went, what?
What? Yeah. And that's what I find even with nurses. The executive director there, she said, oh, Kath, we so need, excuse me, we so need this sort of conversation. So, things are moving along. But I must confess, after I had the abnormal paps, I was diagnosed with vulva cancer.
Yes.
And I went to the GPs and gynecologist. I was booked in and I had to have my clitoris, vulva and lymph glands removed due to cancer.
Right. So that lump that was on the vulva was within the entire, like the labia, both of it. Like, maybe you can explain it better than me.
Sure. It was next to the clitoris, and it was just inside we've got the 2 layers of the vulva, but mine was right next to the clitoris. But after I was put into hospital, it was removed, I was sent home, and there was me, myself, and I. What the hell just happened? Why did this happen? How could this happen? And I was given a brochure at that stage, after I had my genitals removed, a brochure. It was called Less Common Women's Cancers, and it was a faded booklet. And so there, all I was ever given was a diagram of the ovaries, cervix, uterus, vagina. And guess what?
Was there no vulva?
No vulva. And when I appealed to say, well, where's the vulva? I was almost treated like I was the devil herself, or it was pornographic to have a vulva diagram. And yet we've got pornography all over the place, but we couldn't have a diagram. But we're talking a long time ago. Okay. But I actually lobbied the New South Wales Cancer Council, and there we have the vulva included in the diagram, and so everybody else included. One small step. one small step for womankind is what I have to say. So I'm very proud to see that. Yeah.
Bravo to you. It does take one very brave woman to say, you know what, this is actually not okay. I've been through this. I have lived experience. That brochure made me feel very unseen and invisible, and that's not okay. Go you.
I know. Excuse me. Right. What's the next question?
Yeah. So it's hard when we get so excited again.
I know.
So you mentioned before, Kath, that you saw a number of doctors and a number of gynecologists before you got the diagnosis. Do you think that it was taken seriously?
No, well, I mean, because we don't talk about the vulva in society, and there's still this shame and embarrassment, there is no research. I mean, even today, I know there's a research organisation in Australia for gynecological cancers, and there is the uterine, ovarian and cervical, and there is no vulva diagram, and there is no vulva research. But you see, you have to understand how exasperated I am, because I have lobbied for 26 years to try and make this difference, but it still isn't there. But I have my ways and means, and I plan to even go to a politician to say that this is not acceptable in this day and age. But you see, vulval cancer, you've got to understand, these doctors are only taught this much. And somewhere I heard they only have an hour to learn about the vulva. That was years ago.
Wow.
Hoping things have changed. But excuse me.
Because the bodies are so complex, there is a lot to learn. To be fair, like if you're doing your medical degree and there's so many ins and outs, and it would be nice to think that they could learn everything, and that you know, vaginal health had more than an hour. But you know, I'm curious to know, if you don't mind sharing, and you can or not, but what did it look like? How did you know something was abnormal?
Well, when I was having sex, it was irritating me, and then when the doctor said it was nothing, I thought, oh well, I just have to put up with this uncomfortableness. But my mother and two sisters had their breasts removed prior to that, and so my mum said to me, it's not normal, and I thought, Mum, what would you know, opposed to these experts, you know? But as it turned out, it played in my mind that what my mother had said. So in the end, I asked for it to be removed, and it turned out to be cancer. But I found another woman, because I was told at that stage that it's too depressing to connect up with other women. And ironically, I found, excuse me, I found another woman. They had the same operation.
Okay.
But the bonding that we had, see, the mindset was, oh, it's too depressing. But the bonding that we had together was unbelievable. And just as the breast cancer women have that bonding and camaraderie, we need to have this for all things gynecology, not just about the vulva, but the whole box and dice, so to speak.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. So did you have to have any subsequent treatment with the vulva cancer, you know, like a chemotherapy or radiotherapy? What happened next?
Yeah, I had to have 6 weeks radiation. But yes, I want to talk about the mental side of what happened. I mean, it probably took me about 18 months to get over it, because I went knocking on doors. I went to women's organisations, and it's like, oh, only experts can talk about these things. And I thought, but where is the power in this? And mostly the gynecologists were male. I would turn to the women's groups, and, you know, it's only for experts. I would turn to churches, and it's like, well, it's a sense
too hard.
But if God made this magnificent body of ours, why would God be saying, don't talk about it? Why would God be saying, have this shame? So, somehow or other, we've got to change that mindset. So because I found that other woman, I put an ad in the Woman's Day, and all these ladies wrote me horrific, horrible, horrible stories of no power, and so scared of what they might say and scared of what they might do. And I was scared as well, because I had no idea what was going on here. Yeah. So I ended up travelling around Australia to meet up with these women. And so that's when I decided that I would do something about it.
Wow, what a pioneer. And this was in the 80s, right?
No, in 1988, I had the abnormal pap smear, but then it was about 1992, I had the radical vulvectomy. But I just wanted to talk about the symptoms here, right?
Yeah,
and you
sure.
say it's hard for doctors to learn, but when you have a look at the risks factor, it's either an irritation, which a lot of doctors might think it's thrush.
Yes.
And so you're given a cream, and then I know that lady that I first met, she'd been given a cream for 23 years, but it was the chemist that said to her, you want to be careful with this cream because you can only use it small amount. But I also discover you can either have a lump or you can have an irritation.
Okay.
And so thrush is very common. Okay, so it is hard for doctors to understand or whatever. But there's a condition called Lichen Sclerosis, which I can't begin to describe how much pain these women go through, even just urinating when you have this condition. But it's like, well, who cares? I care.
Yeah.
I care that these are our sisters out there that have got more than breasts on their bodies, and where we have sex, where we have the pleasure, where it's such an important part of who we are.
Yes.
And yet we live in shame and we call it a vagina instead. So if I could get the message out of how important, it doesn't matter what happens to me now, but I'm all about trying to prevent this from happening to other women.
Others, yes. And you just touched on it earlier about the mental side of things. Maybe you could share a little bit about that for us. I know you say you've moved past that now from the early 90s, but obviously you're still talking with women who are going through things like this, and you see their mental struggles. What type of things have you experienced and seen?
Well, I remember even in my own case, I was very insecure. That I thought, I'll never be able to have sex again. My husband is going to run off with another woman. So much so that I left him. I took the children and I left him.
Oh, wow!
Because it was a mess. The mess was all over the floor. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And I think, how do we put it back together again? And because Tony, my husband, is not the father of my children. And so, it was sort of, I was betwixt and between and trying to keep them happy and trying to keep them happy. And this is what we do as women. In a sense, I was trying to control. I was trying to keep everybody happy. But I'm here to tell you, you can't do that.
Yes.
You can't keep everybody happy. So where was I going with that?
The mental side of things when you were going through this, and that's another thing that we've only just started to be getting a little bit better at talking about without the taboo of feeling like we are crazy, and now that everyone's in lockdown during COVID, we're all thinking, oh, okay, mental health doesn't mean you have to be kind of in a strait-jacket anymore. It could be you can't get out of bed, or you can't decide what to have for breakfast. So what type of things mentally occurred for you?
Well, it was the insecurity. It was how to manage, and it was looking in a mirror was the hardest for me, because I've only got half a pubic mound because the rest has all been cut out. I've got big holes in my groin because that's been cut out, and it's like, I had to sort of try, and I don't really know how I got past all of that, but it was 18 months of. And they did suggest I go to a sexologist, but the sexologist, I already paid a fortune for my operation, and then to pay out for a sexologist. I mean, sex was the last thing on my list, probably the first thing on my husband's list. But
But yours was to survive.
Mine was to survive. But let me tell you that a lot of people are, come up to me after and ask me a question, but I can actually still have an orgasm through the vagina.
Right.
Isn't that exciting?
Especially for all those women out there. I know a lot of our listeners who have had episiotomies where the clitoris nerves have been cut, and they're told you can't orgasm again. So that to hear that, I'm pretty sure they're going to want to reach out and say, How? Tell us how.
Okay. Well, some can and some can't. So it doesn't mean
Yeah.
to say that everybody can, but it all comes back to your mind again as well. You know, I had to learn about myself. I had to learn who I was. I had to learn rejection. I had to learn a lot of stuff on my own because, I mean, people could have put me down as a hysterical woman.
Okay.
I mean, not that I went around screaming or anything like that, but I was just needed some answers. How could this happen, and why could this happen? And it's happening to other women.
Sure.
And I even know a lady that's dying from vulva cancer. She's not long been given, and it breaks my heart. I mean, I've seen other women die before me as well. You know, it's so sad to sort of think they suffer in silence and they die in silence. It has to stop.
Yeah,
it has to stop.
And it's invisible. So because you can't see it, it therefore doesn't exist. So tell us, Kath, do you know how this happens? Like, is there a particular element that why women are getting vulva cancer?
Well, yes, human papillomavirus is a risk factor, and we all know about human papillomavirus.
Yes.
But lichen sclerosis is not. I'm not a medical person, so I just have to be careful not to sort of say anything medical.
Yeah, sure.
But lichen sclerosis is very debilitating. And, you know, I think we as women, even if you don't have it, we need to gain the understanding so that we can share with one another. If somebody says, I've got lichen sclerosis, it's like, I don't want to know about it. We can't do that anymore.
No.
I remember a group of ladies. I used to go to a woman's breakfast, and they'd say, anybody got any news? And I'd say, oh, gynecological health, you know, we're moving forward. And I received an apologetic letter from that group a few years ago. They said, Kath, when you used to come into the room, we wanted to hide under the tablecloth. But she said, now we're understanding what you're all about. Okay. So a lot of people do want to, even with our discussion here, they might sort of think, I don't want to hear about it. But we as women, need to have that compassion and understanding and education so that when somebody does have something, that we are there for them.
Yeah, great. That's a really, really great point. So was anyone there for you? Were you able to turn to anyone during that process, a friend or a relative or anyone?
Oh, well, I do have 4 sisters, so, you know, we're pretty close. So I did have my sisters, but again, they really didn't. Unless you experience this yourself, you really don't understand the depth of it, you know. Not until I found that other woman. And I think that was 8 months later. No, there wasn't anybody. And that's why it took me so long to get my head around what happened and why it happened. And so I began my research, and I found that word pudendum. And then when I traveled around Australia to meet up with those women, I felt like I'm not the crazy one.
Yeah.
You know?
You were seen and heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was very rejected. You know, I was very sad that I was rejected as I was, but that's why I do what I do, because we can't do this to women.
Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Sorry, I also wanted to say that after my operation, I discovered my daughter actually had polycystic ovaries and endometriosis. But she'd suffered with bad periods for a long time. And I used to think, well, we all have bad periods, bad periods. But I was ignorant. Ignorant that my daughter had these conditions. But 2 million Australian women have got polycystic ovaries and endometriosis. About 173 million in the world have just got endometriosis. And it's like, why aren't we talking about it? What is the problem? But I figure that it needs to come from the United Nations and the United Nations women's groups, because when they open the discussions, then it has a ripple effect in the rest of the community.
Yeah.
But I still haven't quite, I think because I say vulva, but having said that, I was invited to speak at the, because a lot of women used to say to me, oh, don't say vulva in front of ethnic women or Aboriginal women, and be careful, don't say this, don't say that. So I was always sort of being careful. But
do you know why? Why were you not allowed to? Because I don't understand the cultural sensitivity, but maybe you could educate us around that. Is there?
Because of the vulva. That my theory is because the vulva, but I think we might discover that there's a lot of suffering, and that I feel as though it's best not for women to, because some people used to say that I was scaring people.
Yes,
and I thought, okay, but I'm not scaring people. I'm just sharing my story so it doesn't happen to you or your mother, sister, or daughter.
I get
but
that.
Anyhow, I was asked to speak at the Seroptimist International Convention in Kuala Lumpur, and I spoke to the international president. And I said, how am I going to say vulva and vagina in front of all these ethnic women? She said, Kath, I want you to say it. I want you to talk about it. So it's almost like I'm inventing the wheel. Even 26 years later, I'm still inventing the wheel about the vulva. And I don't understand it myself. When you ask that question, I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Totally amazing.
It is amazing. And I guess if we had the answers, we probably wouldn't be sitting here today. But I do feel like what you mentioned about from the top down, there definitely has to be layers from that. And then I'm pretty sure you could agree with me. It's also from the bottom up. Us little people doing the small wins along the way and opening up these conversations is just as important, because I feel like we've got direct reach to women who need to hear it, which is good.
Yes. But I'd like to ask the question, why do we have to be brave to speak out? Why can't we just speak out?
Yeah, I think because we've had so many years and intergenerational silencing and being put in our place, you know, the whole female, male, very, very complex, layered history that we have. I do know, I don't know if you've listened to Yumi Stein's podcast, Ladies We Need to Talk. It's an ABC.
I have tried to get on there, but they said they have enough stories, so they didn't really want my story.
Oh, that's a shame. I love her episode when she talks about the vulva in regards to pornography, because a lot of women are having plastic surgery on their vulva to look like pornography. I didn't know that we have a law that says even in pornography, you can't show the vulva.
No.
And I was like, what?
You can show a penis. You can show a penis.
Yep. And an anus and boobs and all of the, listen to me, boobs, breasts, all of those things. But yet you can't show what a vulva looks like. And I think that's entrenched. That's huge. We've got a lot of unpacking to do with that.
Absolutely. And you allowing me to speak here is making that happen.
I hope so. I really do. And I do feel like I'm pretty sure you would feel it too. There is an inertia coming. There is change on the horizon and all of these, but we just have to keep going. That's the hardest part. Do you ever get tired of doing it, Kath?
Absolutely. But I will never, ever give it up, because it's in my blood. I see women dying and I just can't, because I could have died and I didn't die. But when I see other women dying, and, you know, the statistics are only 1 in 100,000 about vulval cancer. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. But I question the statistics, because you can have precancer of the vulva. So we just chop a little bit out. Well, then, you know, you can go along, come back again another time, and we'll chop a bit more out and chop a bit more out. Well, if that's not on the statistics, how do we know what's going on? None of us women question. And if somebody like me does question, it's like, well, you know,
the true impact is not really understood.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and that's
but I am on the Royal College of Gynecology and Obstetrics in London, and the Australian New Zealand Gynecology, RANZCOG in Australia, on the women's voices as well. And I'm lobbying for an international gynecological awareness day, which I'm still challenged to. And they, thank God that they promoted it last year. But I'm looking for, you see, there's no money put into gynecology. Well, then there's no money to celebrate. There's no money to get out there and have, you know, a lovely time. And so the more we speak out, the better off we are.
Yeah, I do. And I feel like it's very similar to any type of controversial topic. I know even women who have been through birth trauma, quite often they're not counted in statistics because people never go back and ask how your birth was. The hospitals never want to track, the government never wants to know if it went terribly wrong and why and how they can improve it. And I know that for a fact because I went to be part of a study once about childbirth, vaginal childbirth, and I was rejected because my birth was too horrific.
I know. Well, mine's the same story. That I won a few awards, but they won't bring in the media because my story is too graphic. And I think, well, we need to get over it.
Yeah,
so
we do.
Anyhow, what I am already doing, I've got this Undies campaign. Have you heard about my Undies campaign?
That was just going to be my next question. Tell us all about what you're doing. So you've had this journey and this personal experience has taken you somewhere else now. Tell us all about it.
Okay. So when I received those ladies' letters, I thought, well, what are you supposed to do about the women's health centres? It's all very hush-hush. So I rang Senator Amanda Vanstone's office and I said, what can we do? It's all behind the closed doors. And they said, we'll have a national day. And I said, but how do you do that?
Yeah,
and
that's huge.
And they said, well, you just declare it. And so I now have declared an International Gynae Awareness Day, and there it sits. So I thought, what can you have for gynecology? The breast cancer women have bras, so I have
pink.
And I have undies for better understanding. So I've devised these undies thing here like this, and we decorate this little flappy bit here. But then if you lift that up there, it's got all the gynae, including the vulva.
And
Did you know the vulva?
And for those who can't see, obviously, because they're just tuning in, there's a really quite detailed image and it's very clearly labelled and easy to understand.
Yes, so that's what it's all about. But I wanted to also say I've got my latest book out, which is called If Only I Knew.
Okay.
If only I knew, I could have asked for, ask for more help or perhaps have the lump cut out sooner, that I wouldn't have to have so much removed. And then my other book is called The Not So Secret Women's Business.
Oh, I like that name. That's a good title.
Yeah. So, yes, I've got a few props and I've got this, I know the audience can't see it, but I've got this.
The new
this prop
image.
here.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah. Kath, so if we're going to try and make it better for our girls and, for your daughter, if they're having children as well, what age do you think we could start talking about pelvic health with our daughters?
Well, let's start off when they're 12 months old. Let's say, what's your vulva? And that's one way to start it.
Fabulous.
And then we start talking about periods and things like that. I sort of think probably because girls are
much
had their periods about 11 or 12.
Much younger.
Yeah. So therefore we as parents need to be talking. We could even explain it when we're 6, that, we're not, talking about animals and they have this and then they have the babies and it's just a fun way for them to think, so that's what happens. And then probably when they get a bit older you start to say, well, that's what the mummies and daddies or, whatever. But I think very young age.
Yeah, okay. So what's your big dream goal now? So obviously you've got your Gynecological Awareness Day. Just remind us when it is.
It's the 10th of September, and this year, last year, we stood around the bell tower, and we had all these big undies. I've made up all these great big undies, and so this year we're going to be doing the same, and we're hoping to have a band around the bell tower. But last year I had the West Australian Health Minister speak in Parliament House about the Gynae Awareness Day, and he said, I've never said this before and I'll probably never say it again, but I've seen Kath Mazzella's panties.
I love it because it's going to start a conversation. How controversial. I love it.
It is, absolutely. So
so that the bell tower is over in WA, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, but I would love to have that all around Australia. And I mean, even I've got a woman in America saying, you know, what can we do, Kath? What can we do? And but I can only use the undies. And a lot of people, I know my cousin took a pair of the undies to her workplace and asked if she could hang it in the toilet for the gynae day. And they hung it up, but then the women complained that it's too confrontational.
Interesting. Yes,
I know. But I don't think the women have the depth and the knowledge and the understanding of why those undies are up there, you know.
Yeah.
And so there's still a long, like you say, still a long way to go to be able to get to the depth of the work that we're doing.
Yes, and I think the small wins just keep chipping away, as tiring as it is. You're doing an amazing job at what you're doing. Now, Kath, if people did want to, if our listeners want to find you, where's the best place for them to go?
If they go to kathmazzella.com, it's kathmazzella.com.
Wonderful. We'll definitely put the link in our show notes so people can find you. What's next for you? We're heading into Women's Health Week in September, and I'm sure you're going to be pretty busy.
Yes, well, we've got quite a few events organised by Kylie Bonner and the Viva La Femme.
Yes,
we've got a few leading up to that. But I've actually got the interest from a pathology company, and we're going to have a soulful brunch on the 10th of September.
Oh, fabulous.
And we're planning to have a display table at the King Edward Hospital for Women. So that's what we did last year as well. So, and there's a few other organisations that are picking up on it. And but my aim after the Gynae Awareness Day is the United Nations Women. You know, but what I'm planning to do is getting other women's organisations to endorse the need for gynecological awareness, not just on the Gynae Day, but throughout the year, because you see, it's put under reproductive health, and reproductive health to me is like having babies.
It's the internal, it's your vagina. Yeah.
It's polycystic ovaries, fibroids, hysterectomies, menopause, STIs and stuff like that. It's huge. It's a huge business, and I'm going to be targeting an underclothes company. So if there's any underclothes companies out there interested into 2022,
yes.
Let's
watch this space.
Watch this space, yeah. Because we do have, like I would like the Royal College, RANZCOG, to be supported by the community to lead on with gynecological awareness. So because we don't go to a reproductologist, do we? We go to a gynecologist.
Yes, so, definitely.
Anyhow.
I love what you're doing, Kath, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will listen today and feel that they are seen and heard, and that's brilliant, and I love what you're doing. Keep fighting the good fight, won't you?
Well, and Viva La Vulva to you.
I love it. Awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks,
See you later,
Kath.
Stephanie.
Thank you.
Bye.
We would like to give a really big special thanks to Kath today. She kindly agreed to let us share her story on World Gynecological Awareness Oncology Day, even though she has been pioneering for change in this women's health space and created September 10th as the International Gynecological Awareness Day. Kath just knows it's too important not to want to join together and raise awareness, no matter what the calendar says. So thanks, Kath. We really appreciate it. And we're back on track for sharing our chat with the founder of Australian Birth Stories podcast, Sophie Walker, for our next episode. Tune in and bye for now.